Today we will discuss about the third chapter, which is motion in a straight line. We have already completed two chapters. One is physical world, and the second is the measurement units and measurement, and the third one is motion in a straight line. And now the main part of the physics is coming. So be prepared and be very careful. And today I will discuss about the very basic concepts which you already have from the class 9th standard. So basically I hope that you will not have any problem to understand this concept. So first I will discuss about the frames of reference. Now this is the new term for all of you. So frames of reference, it's like you already know the frames. Frames means we know that in mathematics, rectangular coordinate system, there are three coordinates x, y and z. Basically those coordinates are used basically they are used to identify or specify the position of any object. So x, y, z are the coordinates, and they are very helpful to understand the position of any object. So that was a frame of reference, and now this frames of reference means there are it deals with from which standpoint or from which platform you are observing any phenomenon. Okay, suppose look at here. Imagine, suppose you threw and caught a ball while you were on a train moving at a constant velocity and fast station. So to you the ball appears to simply travel vertically up and down. Look at this picture. The ball will simply go up and it will come back in a straight line. So this will be the phenomenon when you will observe this incident staying inside the train. Be very careful. This will be the phenomenon when you observe staying inside the train. You will see the ball will go up and come back again and following a straight line. Okay, now if any person who is not inside the train, who is outside the train and who is standing on a platform, so then he will see that the ball will follow basically a projectile path or like a parabolic path. Okay, and if you split these components, basically you don't have the idea about vectors in detail. You will go through it in the next chapter, but I am telling it now briefly. So suppose this is in this direction the ball is thrown. The observer outside the train, who is standing outside the train, he will observe that the ball is following this carved path. Okay, now in moving this direction there will be two components. We can split this direction into two components. One is vertical components and another is horizontal component. So when the ball is like taking this carved path with a certain velocity, and that velocity can be splitted into two components. One is vertical components, another is horizontal component, and the horizontal component of this velocity v will be exactly similar to the speed of the train. So basically there are two different basically the paths are appear to be different when you observe from two different frame of reference. So inside the train it is a frame of reference. When you observe this ball, then you are inside the train, that is one frame of reference. And when you observe the similar phenomena from the outside of the train, then it will be a different path followed by the ball. So that will be a different frame of reference. So it depends from which frame of reference you are observing any phenomenon. Suppose you are on the earth, I am explaining it. Suppose you are on the earth. So with respect to earth, any moving body is in motion. But suppose you are at rest. So you are at rest with respect to which frame of reference? With respect to earth, you are at rest. Suppose you are sitting, so you are not moving. So this is the explanation when you observe it from the earth. But when suppose your friend now is in another planet, and from this planet, from that planet, if he observes that you are sitting, so with respect to him you are not sitting, because earth is moving with a certain velocity. So though you are in a sitting position or in a resting position with respect to earth, but for the persons who are outside of the earth, you are moving, okay, because earth is moving. So that is the concept of frame of reference. And here in classical physics, all frames of reference are inertial frames of reference. That means the frames of reference are not accelerated with respect to each other, okay, and all the laws of physics are same for all inertial frames of reference, and that is called the Galilean invariance, okay. So now I'll come to the second part, which is concept of point object, because from now on you will from class 9 standard you are dealing with a body, so you will be very familiar with this term from class 11 of point object. So what is point object? Whenever the size of the object is much smaller than the distance it moves in a given time interval, the size of the object can be neglected. That means suppose a body is moving and the distance covered is very greater than the size of the object, then you can take the object as a point object. Point object doesn't always mean that you have to take a point. It doesn't mean, okay. So এটা তোমরা ভেবো না যে পয়েন্ট অবজেক্ট আছে তো তার মানে আমরা এখানে একটা করে বিন্দু বা পয়েন্ট নিয়ে কাজ করব। ইটস নট লাইক দ্যাট। আমরা যে কোনো অবজেক্টকেই পয়েন্ট অবজেক্ট, একটা কারকেও আমরা পয়েন্ট অবজেক্ট ভাবতে পারি ইফ দ্য ডিস্টেন্স কাভার্ড। এক্সাম্পলে আছে, লুক অ্যাট দ্য এক্সাম্পলস, এ কার কাভারিং আ ডিস্টেন্স 10 কিমি can be regarded as a point object because this 10 kilometer distance is very greater than the size of the object, okay. So suppose you are যদি তোমরা একটা ভীষণ লার্জ একটা অবজেক্ট নাও, ওকে, তো সেক্ষেত্রে সেই অবজেক্টটা সাপোজ 10 কিলোমিটার রেডিয়াসের একটা অবজেক্ট নিয়েছো, 10 কিলোমিটার রেডিয়াসে, রিমেম্বার 10 কিলোমিটার রেডিয়াসে you have taken an object, okay. Now that object of 10 km radius is covering a distance of only 5 centimeter, only 5 centimeter. So in that case we cannot take that object of 10 kilometer radius as a point object, understand? So when I'm repeating again, when the distance covered is very greater than the size of the object, then only then we can take that object as a point object. Similarly, earth can be regarded as a point object for starting its motion around the sun. Now we will differentiate between the terms one-dimensional motion, two-dimensional motion and three-dimensional motion. Sometimes before I was explaining that the three coordinates x, y, z are required to specify or identify the position of any object in the rectangular frame of system, okay. So in that case, one-dimensional motion, only one coordinate is required. Only one coordinate is required to understand the motion of the object, okay. So you are not taking the two different directions, you are only taking one coordinate to specify or to state the motion of any object, okay. So if only one out of three coordinates specifying the position of the object changes with respect to time, then the motion is called the one-dimensional motion. Like a body, when it moves along a straight line, it is not changing its direction, so only one coordinate is required, which is x or y or z. So for instance, motion of a block in a straight line motion of a train along a straight track, a man walking on a level and narrow road, and object falling under gravity. These are all the examples of one-dimensional motion. but two-dimensional motions for two coordinates at least are required, because suppose two-dimensional figure আমরা বলি না 2D figure, so 2D figure means only two coordinates, either x or y, either y or z, or either x or z coordinates. That means 2 out of 3 coordinates are required to specify the position of the object. Now if the 2 out of 3 coordinates specifying the position of the object changes with respect to time, then the motion is called the two-dimensional motion. A circular motion is an instance of two-dimensional motion. Okay, now three-dimensional motion, that is in 3D case. So body, and suppose you are taking if all the 3 coordinates specifying the position of the object changes with respect to time, then the motion is called the three-dimensional motion. And a few instances of three-dimension are flying bird, a flying kite. So that is not moving at a particular direction or particular, like it was happening for a straight line. It is changing its directions and changing its dimensions also. So that are the differences between one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional motion. But we will deal in this chapter with one-dimensional motion. Okay, so we already have, I will discuss about some terms: distance, displacement, speed and velocity for this class. And you already know distance is the length of the actual path traversed by an object is called the distance. That is the length of the path. It's simple thing. Distance is the length of the path covered, and it is a scalar quantity because only its magnitude is we are concerned with its magnitude only. We are not concerned with its direction. So it's a scalar quantity, and it can never be zero, negative during the motion of an object. Okay, it cannot be negative or zero. But displacement can be zero because it is the smallest distance. Remember, it is the smallest distance. Displacement, suppose from this picture you can observe, though you are not very expert in understanding the vector chapter, till I am explaining it. Suppose this is a x and y coordinates axis. Okay, now A is a point, so R1 is the position vector to specify the position of this particular point A. Okay, and now when the body is at point B, the position vector is used to specify the position with respect to origin. Now it will be R2, some mistakes are there, it will be R2. Okay, it is R1 and it is R2 vector. So R2 vector is the position vector to specify the position of the object when it is at point B. Okay, so distance is the length of this curved path. Distance is the length of this curved path A and B, between the points A and B. It is the length of the curved path, that is the distance. Okay, but this straight line you are seeing here, the straight line between A and joining the point A and B is the displacement. It is because it is the shortest path or shortest distance. Okay, and it will be calculated by these vector operations. You will understand in the next chapter. So displacement is a vector quantity. Since it is a vector quantity, we take both the magnitude and the direction of it. So in the case of displacement, it can be negative or it can be zero. Okay, so because it's a vector quantity. Now its unit is meter. Its distance and displacement both are expressed in meter. Now we will discuss about speed. Speed, you know, the time rate of change of position of an object in any direction is called the speed of the object. Speed is also a scalar quantity. Distance traveled by time taken, it is, and its dimension is this. You already know how to derive the dimensional formula of any physical quantity, so you can check it. And now the uniform speed. Uniform speed, if you can you also know from the 9th standard what is uniform speed. If an object covers equal distance in equal intervals of time. What does it mean? Equal distances in equal intervals of time. That means suppose a body is moving in the first 10 seconds, it covers a distance of 50 centimeters. Suppose first 10 seconds it covers a distance of 50 centimeters. In the next 10 seconds, it covers a distance of another 50 centimeter. So in 20 seconds, it covers a distance of 100 centimeter. So since in this case, in equal interval of time of 10 seconds, it is covering the same distances of 50 centimeter. So in this case, it is called the uniform speed, because the object is covering equal distances in equal interval of time. But for the next part, non-uniform or variable speed, in this case, suppose the body is moving and the first 10 seconds it covered 50 centimeter, but in the next 10 seconds it covers 100 centimeter. So there is a changes in the distance is covered. So in the first 10 seconds it was covering 50 centimeter, in the next 10 seconds it was covering 100 centimeters. So in net 20 seconds, in total 20 seconds, it is covering 150 centimeters. So in this case, the speed is not uniform, because the object is not covering the same distances in equal interval of time. And since the body is not covering the same distances in equal interval of time, we have to take the average speed if we want to calculate the net speed for the distance covered. So in that case, we have to take the average speed, and average speed will be the total distance covered divided by total time taken. So we will not separately the 10 seconds, first 10 seconds, second 10 seconds, third 10 seconds, will not take will not calculate like this. We will calculate the total distance covered. Okay, now I was giving the example, in the first 10 seconds it was covering the 50 centimeter distance, and the next 10 seconds it is covering the 100 centimeter distance. So a total distance covered is 150 divided by total time, that is the 20 seconds. So 150 divided by 20 will be the average speed in this case. So if the particle travels equal distances s1, s2, s3 if the particle travels distances s1, s2, s3 with speeds v1, v2, v3, then the average speed will be like this, the total distance divided by total time, because total time will depend on the velocities v1, v2, v3, because v1, v2, v3 are not same, they are different. So different interval of time, they are covering different distances. So you have to take the total distance divided by total time, and that will be the average velocity. Now this is the specific case. If the particle travels equal distances, suppose s1 and s2 are equal to s, and with velocities v1 and v2, then the average velocity will be like this. And if the particle travels with speeds v1, v2, v3 during time interval t1, t2, t3, then the average speed will be, because the first t1 second it is moving with a velocity with a speed v1, so the distance will be v1 into t1. In the second phase, second interval of time t2, it is moving with the speed v2, so the distance covered for the time duration of t2 will be v2 into t2. And for that duration of the time t3 duration of time, it is moving with the velocity with the speed v3, so the distance covered during the time interval t3 will be v3 into 3, and it will this for all the time intervals. So average speed will be the total distance, that is v1 into t1, v2 into t2. So we have to add up all the distances covered in different time intervals divided by, and we have to divide it by the total time taken, that is t1 plus t2 plus t3, and you will get the average speed. Okay, and this is the specific case. If a particle travels with speeds v1, v2 for equal time intervals, that is t1 and t2 and t3 are all equal, then the average speed will be v1 plus v2 by 2. And when a body travels equal distance with speeds v1 and v2, and the average speed v will be like this. So these are the formulas. I have sum up all the formulas, and you have to remember this for solving the problems. Now the instantaneous speed, then that is the important part for the class 11. What is instantaneous speed? Instantaneous speed, when an object is traveling with variable speed, then its speed at a given instant of time is called the instantaneous speed. From the terminology instantaneous, you can easily understand what is actually asked, that is the speed at any instant. At any instant, that means at a particular moment. Okay, so this is the new expression for you. Limit delta t tends to 0, delta s by delta t. I'm telling delta s is the distance covered, delta s distance covered is in delta t time duration, delta t time duration, distance covered. Suppose after 3 seconds, suppose at 3 seconds a body has covered a path of 5 centimeter. Okay, now in the 5 seconds, in the third second the body has already covered a distance of 5 centimeter. Now in the fifth second the body has covered a distance of 8 centimeter. Okay, so basically during the interval of time between 3 second and 5 second, that is 5 minus 3, that is between this third second and fifth second, that is for 2 seconds, it has covered a path or covered a distance 8 minus 5, that is 3 centimeter. So that 2 second, 5 minus 3 is the delta t, that means it is the time interval. So delta t is the time interval and delta s is the distance covered during this time interval, delta t. So as we minimize or make smaller the value of delta t very close to 0, we will get the instantaneous speed. So our objective is to minimize this time duration delta t or time interval delta t, and our objective is to take as small as possible. So when the delta t will approach towards 0, that means you have taking a speed at a particular moment, and this expression is in derivative form. It is written as ds by dt. So this limit thing, you can only write delta s by delta t is equal to ds by dt if you take a limiting option delta t tends to 0. Otherwise you will not be able to express ds by dt. Okay, so what is the physical significance of this ds and dt? That is the distance covered in the time interval dt, that is rate of change of distance covered. Okay, so that is the ds and dt, and that is the instantaneous speed when it is written in the derivative form. And the physical significance of this derivative form is the instantaneous speed. That means you are taking the speed of an object or particle at a particular instant. So our objective will be to minimize the value of this delta t as much as possible, and it will and when it will approach towards 0, we will get this ds and dt. And this instantaneous speed is a vector quantity. It is a vector quantity. As it's both the magnitude and direction, the velocity of an object can be 0, negative, it can be. So there is a mistake. The speed is not a vector quantity, it's a scalar quantity, and rectify this. This is not a vector, this is a scalar quantity. I think this line is written for the velocity part, so it is mistakenly placed here. So correct it. This is speed, instantaneous speed is a scalar quantity. Okay, thank you.